If you have an asset and you have to transfer that asset to another party for them then to do something on your behalf to generate a return, in some jurisdictions and some interpretations, that actor doing that may be a regulated actor. Why? Because they have a custodial risk and potential information asymmetries, and also your returns are 100% based upon their efforts and their efforts alone. You're not in a common enterprise where you're working together. Rather, you have just lent or given with an expectation of return an asset to them to do something on your behalf.
Following the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission (SEC) crackdown on crypto staking for retail investors in the United States, several prominent people in the industry have denounced the regulator's aggressive enforcement against the overall digital assets industry. In one of her tweets, ARK Invest founder Cathie Wood warned that the SEC's regulatory onslaught would drive investors away from the United States to more welcoming countries and jurisdictions. Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson shares similar views with the renowned hedge fund manager. In one of his recent broadcasts, Hoskinson discusses the issue of the regulatory onslaught regarding staking services and how it can impact the entire cryptocurrency industry. Unlike others that have weighed in on the matter, Hoskinson is not entirely critical of the regulator's crackdown against staking services offered by centralized exchanges like Kraken. He believes the move can be advantageous to small staking pools while strengthening decentralization. What Hoskinson is most critical of is custodial staking models, especially the one run on the Ether ecosystem. Hoskinson believes the system is a far cry from the industry's decentralized status. He shared similar views in a tweet from February 9, which reads, "Ether staking is problematic. Temporarily giving up your assets to someone else to have them get a return looks a lot like regulated products. Slashing and bonds are not so good. Non-custodial liquid staking, on the other hand, is like the mining pools we used for 13 years. While Ether uses a custodial staking model, Cardano uses a non-custodial liquid staking model, which Hoskinson believes is similar to the Bitcoin mining pools, which have been used for over 13 years without difficulties." In two follow-up tweets, the Cardano founder noted that Cardano's staking model is a well-thought-out process and Ether's custodial staking model might pose problems to other proof-of-stake ecosystems like Cardano. Here are the tweets. "We've thought a lot about what makes sense for a sustainable proof-of-stake protocol that promotes control by the many instead of the few and creates a large, decentralized environment. Locking funds, encouraging centralization, and poor protocol design hurt the whole industry. It's sad that all proof-of-stake protocols might get lumped together due to a fundamental misunderstanding about the actual facts of operation and design. It's like comparing 3 Mile Island to a modern 4th-generation nuclear reactor because they both use the word fission." To further clarify his tweet about Ether and its staking model, Hoskinson recorded a video broadcast from which we will now bring you clips. Please watch to the end, share, and hit the like button as the entrepreneur and developer discusses his views on custodial staking models and the ongoing battle with the SEC. Also, be sure you drop your comments and observations in the comment section and subscribe for more. Thanks and enjoy the video.
This is where the rub kind of comes in. When you compare that with a Bitcoin model of Bitcoin mining pools or a Cardano model with a Cardano stake pool, the custody of the underlying asset, in the case of Bitcoin, it's your hash resources, so your actual work payload. In case of Cardano, it's the synthetic resources. They still belong to you. And what you've done is you've delegated it to them, and now you're collectively working together, you and others, to perform an action, to build a block. And only if that work is done are you guaranteed a return. But you have to actually do the work to get the return. Okay, so it's a very different model, and there's no information asymmetry. You both know the same thing. There's no custodial risk, and the return is as based on your efforts as it is based on the efforts of the pool. But both of these are technically proof of stake. And the matter gets further conflated and contaminated when you also look at the fact that a lot of these staking services, they go beyond staking and potentially put it into some sort of DeFi play to augment a yield, which means that perhaps there's a risk there. Or in some cases, to give you liquidity, they issue a synthetic asset and say, here's this thing, and it has redemption rights. There's all kinds of variations here, especially if there's a bonding component and there's an opportunity cost to losing access to those funds. Okay, so none of this is figured out. And every jurisdiction is going to have a slightly different opinion And it's very clear that it looks like the SEC is converging to a point where perhaps, the very least, that exchanges doing this on your behalf is problematic. Now, I'm not going to complain too much about exchanges getting out of the staking business because, I would like small stake pool operators, and I would like staking to be very distributed and decentralized. And it feels intrinsically uncomfortable if one entity has 40% of the resources and basically they don't even own that asset, and yet they're able to vote with it and stake with it and do other things. It's probably better to pull that off of exchanges if possible. So that's a good thing. But that said, it is an inconvenience to the industry as a whole. And that's because what usually happens is they try to apply one size fits all interpretations and understandings to nuanced things. So if Ethereum staking, for example, in its current model with the majority of its actors is a regulated activity, they may just decide that all staking is a regulated activity and say, well, fuck you, litigate it in court, and we'll figure it out. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying that is in this spectrum of options and possibilities as a result of these actions. And obviously, if there is a settlement between Kraken and the SEC, something will come of it, and we can read more and kind of dig into the facts and circumstances and try to really understand where the problem point is in the analysis and why people have issues. But again, it's a very nuanced topic. So if you're a stake pool operator and you may become regulated, or there's a regulation, there's layers to that. With the infrastructure bill that was passed in the United States, there's this unenforced statutory mandate about this concept of collection of information about the people that you have a business relationship with. So it was a stupid thing. Toomey and others really tried hard to remove it from the bill, and unfortunately, politics got in the way, and it passed with a very bad provision. A strict interpretation of the U.S. infrastructure bill would say if you're a stake pool operator and someone's delegated to you, you have a KYC requirement to know enough about that person if requested to be able to provide that information to an actor like the IRS or something like that. Okay. Now, in practice, Treasury Department says they're not going to enforce that. This said, it is an interesting question about starting to change staking models to accommodate regulatory nuances.
In his video, the Cardano founder clarified that so far, regulators have not found a problem with Cardano's liquid non-staking model, hinting at possible litigation if the system is somehow lumped together with Ether's custodial model. He also discusses how a further crackdown on crypto staking services in the United States might affect the overall cryptocurrency industry and the development of the industry in the US. Here is another clip from the video broadcast.
It's important to point out, as it stands right now, it does not seem that any complaint about the Ethereum custodial staking model is transitive to the Cardano liquid non-staking model. And it's certainly something that should be litigated if somebody asserts that, because I think it's completely wrong and there's no facts and circumstances to equivocate the two. I think we fall under the same work package model as Bitcoin mining pools, which have been in operation for almost 13 years in our industry without incident or complaint. But obviously, there's going to be a national discussion now about these things, especially now that Kraken and others are getting involved. It does not appear that there's any attempt to say, oh, well, staking mechanics somehow now make the underlying asset a security. You'll probably see a lot of FUD over Twitter, Reddit, and other places saying, oh, well, if staking is a security, that must mean the underlying asset is. So Ether is now a security, or ADA is now a security. Let's be very clear. You can take wheat, which is a commodity, or gold, a commodity, and put it into some sort of package or structuring where that package is a security, or that activity that you're doing with it is regulated. But that doesn't make wheat or gold a security. So you don't have that transitivity there where what you do with stake pools could infer the underlying asset has a problem. And we haven't seen any attempt to do that at the moment. Now, obviously, again, governments are unpredictable. Facts and circumstances could change, and we see things the same time you guys do. So we'll cross that bridge if it comes. But as it stands right now, the ecosystem is fine. So I don't think there's any issue with Cardano as it sits. I don't think there's any issue with our staking model as it sits. Unfortunately, conflation of what Ethereum is doing with Cardano may drag us in an uncomfortable direction, and we as an industry have to work on these nuances and details. The good news is that there's plenty of other ecosystems that have more sensible consensus models, and as a result would likely litigate and fight bad things. Maybe all this goes away with the US government changing from one political party to another, and they're more reasonable than the current one about the status of cryptocurrencies in the United States. Or maybe a law is passed that creates statutory clarity about where and when and what we're supposed to do. Like FIA had this concept of an auxiliary asset, for example. Until then, we're still living in the regulation by enforcement paradigm. And until then, we're still living in the we'll let you know and best of luck situation, which is the absolute worst way of running an economy. It's the absolute worst way of conducting business. It's ultimately counterproductive and destructive. And all it does is convince people to offshore and blacklist the United States, which is happening en masse now. And our loss is Dubai's gain, and our loss is Switzerland's gain and other jurisdictions. It's not to say there aren't bad actors. Every industry has them. FTX is the pinnacle of that for our industry, but it's just one of many that we've dealt with for almost 14 years now, whether it be Silk Road or MT Gox or BitConnect or OneCoin. These things do happen. And oftentimes they have the exact same structure, which is wasn't the crypto. It wasn't a failure of a protocol. It was a centralized actor saying, trust us. You trusted them, and then they screwed you. By the way, custodial staking does suffer from this problem. If you give your funds to somebody else to do something with them, they can screw you too. That's why regulation exists. Regulation comes into play when these problems are there.
To conclude his video, Hoskinson stated that his tweets about Ether were in response to a comment soliciting his opinion on the issue, not just a baseless attack to take down a competitor. He also explained that it was perfectly reasonable to point out that the protocol design choices that people have made may inadvertently create problems for the entire industry from a regulatory viewpoint. What are your thoughts on Charles Hoskinson's statements on Ether and Cardano staking models? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.